Hello friends, today we are going to learn object-oriented analysis of software design and modeling. Before starting with the lecture, let me introduce myself Professor Poonam Mahale, working in IT department of Kekewa College of Engineering Education and Research. So let's start with the lecture. So objective of today's lecture, by the end of lecture, student will be able to understand the basics of UML modeling language. Along with that, student will be able to understand analysis process and use case modeling. So let's start with the first topic of today's lecture. Object-oriented analysis method make a use of basic object-oriented concept in requirement analysis phase of software development lifecycle. The main motive behind the object-oriented analysis is to find real-world objects and entities in the proposed system scenario. And that's why identifying use case is a one activity that is involved in object-oriented analysis process. So, first step in identifying use cases is a finding appropriate solution to a given problem statement. And to find appropriate solution, we need to understand the problem and its domain first. So, for understanding system, analysis process plays an important role. Main objective of the analysis is to capture a complete set of requirements, to capture unambiguous and inconsistent picture of the requirement of the system. The static object modeling in object-oriented analysis comprises object modeling and class modeling. So analysis is a process of transforming a problem definition into a coherent statement of the system's requirement. That means here we analyze a system, and analyze is nothing but an we identify the system requirement by considering the problem definition. And object oriented analysis involves a interaction phase, that is nothing but an communication phase. To understand the system requirement, we need to communicate with the customer, right? And that's why analysis involves an interaction with the people. So the people are nothing but a stakeholders that are going to use the system. And that's why identifying use case is important role, it plays an important role in object oriented analysis process. It is said that analysis is a difficult activity because there are three major difficulties in the analysis phase we usually face, and that is nothing but a fuzzy description. At the start, user is in or customer is in confusion mind, so he unable to state requirement clearly. He may state a requirement that may create a confusion. So fuzzy description leads analysis activity into a difficult level. Second thing is nothing but an incomplete requirement. Initially, in the starting phase, user itself don't know what are the requirement of the system, what he wants from the system. So incomplete requirement, due to incomplete requirement, analysis activity is again a difficult one. And sometimes user may add unnecessary features, and by adding unwanted or unnecessary feature rather than clearing a concept, it may create a confusion with the software developer and project development team. So that's why it is said that analysis activity is a difficult activity. Object oriented analysis activity is done with the help of unified approach which is defined in analysis process. So what exactly this unified approach is? The object oriented analysis phase of unified approach uses two things of use case modeling, and that two things are nothing but an actors and use cases, and these actors and use cases are used to describe the system from user's perspective. So UA process helps to identify requirement of the system by considering the user point of view. Along with that, UA process, unified approach process, consists two important entities, and that is nothing but an actors and use cases. So what exactly actors are? Actors are nothing but an entity which going to interact with the system. These are the external factor that going to interact with the system. An actor is an external user of the system who is responsible for communication and coordination with the software system. It is not always necessary to have a human being as an actor. We may have any other element or in an external system as an actor. So, in the UML, in the Unified Modeling Language, or in the use case modeling, an actor have different representation. Actors are always external to the system. Actors interacts with the system. Again, in unified approach, a use cases plays an important role. So, what exactly use cases are? Use cases are nothing but an scenarios that describe how actors are going to use the system. So, use cases are nothing but a description of a role played by the actor. One actor can have one or multiple roles. So, similar with that, a set of activities that are performed by actors are represented in use cases. So, use cases are meant for specification of the interaction between the system itself and the end user of the system. So, basically, use case offers a detailed description of how system is used. So, these use cases and actors are involved in unified approach, and these two entities are again involved in use case modeling. So, we'll see what exactly use case modeling is. Use case modeling uses use cases for describing the scenarios, and that scenario helps us to understand the system requirement. In use case shows the interaction between users and a system. Use case also captures the goal of user and the responsibilities. As I already told, it also it represents the role played by the actor. So it shows the responsibilities of the system to its users. The set of activities and event in some proper sequence is maintained in the use cases. In the use case model, use case can be instrumented in a project development, planning, and documentation of the system requirement. Whatever the scenarios that we describe that are used in the software development lifecycle and in the SDLC phases. So there are some phases that uses use case model, and that phases are nothing but an project planning, project development, and for system documentation purpose. So use cases is nothing but an a use case is defined as a set of scenarios that collectively work together to achieve a common user goal. Use case model also describes the uses of the system and shows the courses of the event that can be performed. So system interaction is shown in the use case model. In use case modeling, actor identification is important because use cases are nothing but an role played by the actor. So first we need to identify the actors of the system. So actors, as we have already said, as we have already know, an actor is an external user of the system who is responsible for communication and coordination with the system software. So identifying classes is an important as identifying classes, structure, association, attributes and behavior. So system in the system we need to identify the class, the interaction of particular class with the other class, that means the relationship of actors with the other actors and the role played by the actors. So the term actor represents the role of the user plays with respect to the system. So for identification of actor of particular system, we follow a questions we can consider for actor identification. And when we deal with an actor, it is important to think about the role than the people or the job title. So role played by the actor that we need to consider rather than the job title. So for identifying actors, a set of questions we can consider, and that questions are nothing but an who are the end users of the system, who are the installers of the system, who provides the information of the system, then who maintains the system, who are going to use the system. So these are the certain questions that can be helpful for actor identification. Again, a actor can be a user. A user may play one or more role. Consider an example of head of the department. So HOD can play a role of teacher. HOD can play a role of head also. So actor can play a more one or more role. And we need to consider these roles of an actor. So basically you have to identify the actors and understand how they will going to use the system and how they are going to interact with the system. So that these are the important instructions that will help us to understand what exactly actors do. Actors can also find through certain questions. So as I already told, who is using the system, who affects the system, which are the external hardware or the other system, then who provides information to the system, who are the end users of the system, what problem does the application solve, who is going to maintain the system, how do users use the system. These are the certain questions that will help us to identify actors. So this diagram, this picture basically represents the difference between the user and actor. Here in this picture you can able to see there are John, Raja and Lily. These are the three users of the system, whereas John is a member as well as an employee. So John is playing a role of employee and member. If John is doing a operation by using a member, then John can borrow a book. But if a John is an employee, then he can order a book, he can issue a book. If we consider an example of Lily, Lily is a member only. So actor in this picture is nothing but an members, employee and volunteers. So Lily can only borrow the books. Raja is a volunteer and employee. So Raja can help us to check ID. It, Raja is also help. Raja user can also help us to maintain the shelf. So the role played by the actor is important thing, and the role played by actor is nothing but an use cases. So in this way, in the use case modeling, actor identification and use case description is an important. So in today's lecture, we have learned the unified approach and use case modeling. Under that, we have learned how to identify actors. Thank you. Hope you all have understood today's concept.